There's David. David cannot be heard.
I was being respectful. How are you doing?
Oh, that was interesting. Okay, good. And be respectful and introduce yourself to these other white men.
Hello. Dave Hampton dialing in from the UK. So Friday afternoon here, but I'm a medical device software guy and have created a few startups and met Joe at the 10X conference February last fall before all this started.
With a week to spare. Now,
Yeah.
I knew you as the entrepreneurial guy and the many business guy, but I didn't know you as the software guy. Tell us about that primarily.
Mainly biomedical signal processing. So I've been involved in machine learning and signal processing ways of extracting information for presentation to clinical decision making.
Well, that's interesting. I think I just signed you up for a future week. Let's see what week we have available.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much. It's good to join the group. I'm looking forward to it.
And David, you don't celebrate Independence Day over there, so you can do July 3rd.
75 years since victory in Europe, so everybody went out and set up in their driveway and socially distanced and waved at their neighbors across the street.
Okay. Well, some bright bunny already pushed the broadcasts button. So this whole thing has been live. And our star today is none other than Jonathan Saul. He's a fan favorite. He typically calls in from, hey, Count. Hey. He typically calls in from his walks somewhere on a beautiful California vista. And today he's chosen to.
I can go out there if you like.
Your backgrounds are the most diverse.
You should at least go where your wife's art is. So you've got.
That's what I was going to say. That was next. We either see vistas or we see his wife's art. Today we just have backlighting.
Let's see. There we go. How's that? Very abstract.
It's very abstract. I don't know if that kind of abstraction will help us manage business development in a pandemic, however. But that's why we're here.
It's all about creativity. Understand that.
Okay. Well, change your angle a little bit because you're coming in and out of color with the backlighting.
How's that?
All right. Now, for God's sakes, educate us.
Well, I think it's going to be an exercise for all of us. I did want to run through with the presentation just to keep everything in line.
All right.
Because I've been running on fumes. It's been 5 days of raising $2.5 million. So
wow.
And we did it.
You in fact raise $2.5 million in 5 days?
Yes.
Wow. I'm paying attention.
So
I gave you the presenter tool. Show us how to do that.
Did that work?
Yeah.
All right. Hopefully everything's okay. And I don't see everyone, but
we see you, and we see business development during the pandemic.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm going to try to keep this light and fluid and ask questions along the way. So please bear with me. Again, I've been working on like 4 hours sleep for the past week. But
we just want the part where you get $500,000 a day. Go.
Let's see. Play from start. All right. So we're going to talk about business development during a pandemic, of course. And what is business development? Does anyone have a strong opinion about that term?
Mark Fine, you are recognized and unmuted.
The best definition I've heard of business development is sales without the accountability.
Well, we like to think of it as creating long-term value, but I like that term.
We can't see anything on your screen. If like play, it's supposed to be a white screen. You have succeeded.
You can't see the screen?
So this
Just a
happened to me when I did the GoToWebinar, and we eventually had to just do my straight slide deck. If
Yeah,
you
don't push the button. I don't
PowerPoint,
understand this, but
if you shared PowerPoint, then you hit present mode, it's not going to share anymore.
Yeah,
it
it's
doesn't
not-
happen all the time. But go ahead and hit escape, and we should be able to see.
I just hit escape. Can you see it now?
Yep. Now we can, and we can click to add notes as well, but we'll endure.
No worries. I can remove the notes.
Yeah.
And make it bigger if possible. How's that?
Yay.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, that's a great term. It is sales. It is a bit of marketing. It's a lot of strategy, and it's really a creative process. And I do take it seriously in terms of responsibility for bringing in value, whether it's margin or sales. And we want to talk about, long-term value. We'll get to that in a second. I did want to talk about what is a pandemic. So we don't have the animations in here, so you kind of see what I was kind of leading towards, which is the Greek word pandemos, which pam meaning all and demos meaning people, and it's something that affects all people. And of course, there's been several pandemics. Obviously, 1918 was a huge pandemic. 50 million people died worldwide. I remember very well the 2009 pandemic. I was spending a lot of time in Asia at that time. More than 500,000 people passed away due to that flu. And of course, we're dealing with the current pandemic, which has affected people across the globe. We're well over 300,000 killed so far this year. And it's quite scary, of course. At the same time, I'm an economist, and I do look at things through an economic window. And I do look at, the ways that the economy grew after pandemics. For example, in the 1920s, we saw massive, massive growth after the 1918 pandemic. And there was a lot of creativity going on at that time. There were tons of good ideas and products and things to buy, and people did buy. But of course, every cycle ebbs and flows, and at the tail end of that, we saw the Great Depression. We saw other pandemics or other crises, I should say, that I certainly remember. The first one being the oil shock of the 70s. I remember waiting in line with my parents to get gas. I remember Black Monday. The savings and loan crisis ensured that I didn't have a job coming out of university. There was, of course, the Asian crisis in 1997, which I was in Asia at that time, and many other crises. I was in Greece in 2010 when the debt crisis hit. So these are all, massive, massively impactful situations. And of course, the COVID pandemic right now is creating obviously a very serious crash, and we're only starting to see the beginning of it. So let's look at business needs in the context of business development. And I think a lot of us are familiar with Maslow's, basic hierarchy of needs, this notion of core physiological survival necessities. And then you move up towards greater and greater stable, emotional versus, cultural needs. And what happens during these crises is that we tend to kind of fall back onto our core, more basic needs. And of course, in a business, that would be making sure that we can get supplies, that we can actually make some basic sales, that we can pay the rent and a lot of things like that. And so obviously a lot of the strategic steps seem to get forgotten, but they're actually quite important during a crisis. And again, I'll give you again a little bit of context in terms of business development. I do really believe that it's fundamentally a mix of marketing, sales, and strategy, and you really can't decouple those things from it. And it is a creative process, and we're looking at existing business value as well as new business value. And during these moments, you want to exercise that creativity in order to either support the existing business or find new ways to navigate out of this crisis. So going back to the fundamental definition, in my view, of business development, we're looking at creating cash, we're looking at cost savings, and these are internal things, of course. There's access to product, there's efficiencies, there's quality, competitive advantages, technology that's new, that will give us, again, some more sustainable advantages. How to create loyalty, really a very important thing during a crisis. And of course, I have a background in luxury marketing, so prestige is an important factor for me. There's a phrase that I use a lot, which say that I love the chaos, but I hate the confusion. And of course, at this time, the suffering is, even more, is even worse. But the important thing is that there's a lot of smoke, there's a lot of disruption, there's a lot of things that you see, and we spend a lot of time in business development thinking about this terminology. Are you guys familiar with the term left of boom?
I am not.
It's like
So
David is.
it's a military term. It basically is, for the these roadside bombs. It's a timeline. Before the boom happens, you're doing surveillance. You could think of it in a business term as, your regulatory systems, making sure that you have everything under control. The right of boom would be like, notifying the FDA, doing a recall. So just to give you some context, but the big, elephant in the room is all the smoke, the destruction, the things that are grabbing everyone's attention. So I always recommend to actually go, instead of running away from the boom, run to the boom, try to see what's going on, try to understand what's happening beyond the noise and beyond the smoke, try to understand the real destruction, and try to understand what's going to be the new next as fast as you can. And the questions that you have to ask yourself is, what stays the same? Do the values of the company or the business, will it change? It's unlikely. Differentiators may change, goals may change, priorities will certainly change. Your positioning in the market may also change. And so in the now of business development, especially during a crisis or a pandemic, we want to look at assembling the most creative cognitive thinkers, and getting them to really address how to survive, how to get those preservation things in place, like cash management, like sales, but also looking at opportunities. We don't want to just protect the business. We need to understand that there's a lot of people who are focused on the boom and they're not paying attention to the market opportunities. So we want to look at all of those factors. And here's an exercise that I wanted to do with you guys. So bear with me here. First of all, I need to give you some sense of what is positioning. So I don't know if everyone's familiar with positioning, but I'm sure Joe is. It's really a way to document the brand's intended audience and how the brand communicates and differentiates itself. And we're thinking about the audience, who are we for, our point of differentiation, like how are we distinct, what makes us credible, what's the reason to believe, and of course the emotional benefits, how do we make people feel. And even in the medical community, we know that doctors always talk about, we want data, we don't care about the emotion, we don't care about the marketing, but we also know that medical information with emotion is actually taken in better and with more confidence. So we know that these things are really powerful. Now I'm going to give you a positioning landscape using an example with watches, because I figured it's going to be fun to do something that's different than the medical environment. And so you can see here, and it's too bad we can't have the animation, but what this basically shows is that there's different markets. There's a sports market, there's a fashion market, there's a jewelry or a connoisseur market, and then there's a lifestyle segment in the center. And all of those brands sit on this landscape between, to the left, very technical product, and to the right, very design product. And of course, on the vertical axis, we're looking at basically accessibility. It's either very exclusive at the top and then down towards the bottom, really very friendly, very democratized, more entry-level products. Now, once we've got that positioning landscape, we can think about overlaying the distribution. We can think about, well, are the department stores going to survive this pandemic? Are the boutiques, the individual boutiques, going to work okay? And so now we're adding layers and dimensions into the mix. The other thing we can do is we can look at technology and see how technology plays out. So in very technical products, you have more digital coming into play. Even as high up into the luxury brands as Breitling or Tag Heuer. You also have the Apple Watch that has, penetrated the market with a digital product in the heart of the lifestyle segment, and they're able to get higher price points and create more value than some of the lower end digital products in the fashion world. So when we look at those types of things, we can see that there's positioning trends that we want to look at, and we want to anticipate the future, not just kind of live in the now. So during this pandemic, we might see different brands move to different places, but one of the things that we're definitely going to see is we're going to see all these products, all of them, get hit hard, except for maybe the products that are about health and wellness. So for example, Suunto or Garmin or Polar or any of these brands where you're doing some health related activities. The Apple Watch they've already been attacking the segment of lifestyle products, but imagine they add a feature that measures temperature, and all of a sudden it becomes a necessity for everyone to show that they haven't had a fever in the past 24 hours. So bear with me here, sorry. So now in that exercise, I'd ask that if you guys are living in a very defined market, go ahead and do the exercise. Try to play out the different layers and the different aspects of your market. And I'd be happy to look at those and challenge and see what kind of movements or trends might emerge out of this COVID crisis. Does anyone have a very well-defined domain that they're working in?
I do, because it's what I do for a living. So again, your backlighting is coming in and out.
Sorry.
I was beginning to type in for everybody the formula, and it is a formula. There are 5 blanks to fill in. I'll share it later, but if you are quick and you want to write it down, it's to whom, who's your target, to whom, what, it's how you identify your name, brand, or whatever. What is the brand of what is your frame of reference. I'll fill these in with an example. To whom, what is the frame of reference that, what's your primary benefit? Because, how can I believe that that is true? So, for me, to small to mid-sized medical device companies and the vendors that serve them, Joe Hage, instead of Medical Marcom, instead of Medical Devices Group, this is a choice, it's me. Joe Hage is the medical device marketing strategist and connector. It's long, but work with me. That can help you increase the quantity and value of your leads and connections because he has the world's largest online medical device community and has done this for this, and that company. And you can ask them for references. Long, not meant to be romance copy, but clearly defined. I know exactly who I'm targeting and what benefit I offer them. And that's what I communicate more poetically than I just did for illustrative purposes.
Great.
And while I have the mic, Andrea Davis is joining us for the first time, and I've asked her to put on her webcam, but she's not yet pushed that button, but she will. And we continue.
Great. So in the context of those positions or that positioning statement, think about the environment that you're in and think about some of the trends or some of the major moves that are going to happen because of the crisis, and then try to anticipate where do you want to move into new territory, Joe? Like, for example, would there be other types of clients, different sizes of clients? Maybe they need, there's a different segment or different business or different industry that actually starts to merge into your environment and you can add value. These are great exercises, business development exercises to play out in terms of thinking how you can take more business or earn more during this crisis. But you really have to think where things are and how things will settle when things calm down. Another exercise is on differentiation.
I know my situation is somewhat unique, but I could show you a before and an after of what the Medical Devices Group homepage looked like regarding COVID. And while my value prop is materially the same, I'm emphasizing connections and virtual now, which is just, that's a slight copy and positioning change, but it's still part of the base. So the exercise here, this is very much a familiar and comfortable conversation for me to have, unlike those engineers who start talking about stuff on Fridays and I'm like, what are you talking about? That when you're that solid in what you know, you can pivot and feel comfortable doing it. But it's not an art that everyone appreciates as deeply as I do because I have to feed my family. Please continue.
Thank you. So another exercise that I would love for everyone to try out And again, I'm happy to, weigh in, give you some advice. I really think that, that's part of this group, is that we can help each other. And these are things that I do literally every single day, every single hour. So it's a pleasure to exercise. It's a creative process, and it's a creative muscle that you have. And so when you work it regularly, most people have a problem thinking out towards the future. And it's a normal thing. It's a protective mechanism, I think. I think that when you think too far out into the future, you can get scared. So the brain kind of brings you back down to the now. But the more you exercise this thinking out into the future, the more interesting it can be from a business development standpoint. So this is a very ugly slide. I apologize, but I couldn't figure out any other way to do it in a slide presentation. But the basic idea is, take a differentiator. Like Joe, what's a differentiator for you?
Only person
where
with
you
a great
stand
big
out.
group.
Sorry.
I'm the only human with a great big group.
Okay. So you've got your great big group, and the exercise is to basically take that. Did you have a great big group when you started?
No,
Was it always your intention to have a great big group as a differentiator?
no, it fell into my lap back in 2011.
Well, some people might have, thought, my intention is to have leverage that power of a great big group. And so there was tangible steps that took place in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011. As you were building your great big group, you made certain priorities, you made certain choices in order to get that group as great as it is. And that's kind of what this differentiator pillar is about. You're essentially mapping over time the steps that's necessary in order to construct your differentiator, to prove to people that this is truly a differentiator. So if you say,
just because it's so unusual, in my case, just because it's so unusual, my work was in 2012 after its founder died, and I tried to make something of it. My adjusted gross income in 2012 was $28,000, as I invested all of my time and effort to figure out what this thing was, and it hurt, but it paid off later. And then COVID hit. So if anyone has a check they could write me, I'd be very grateful. Please continue.
Well, the exercise, and some people do it from left to right, some people do it up, down. The main idea is, take something that differentiates you from the competition, from other marketers, from other medical devices, from other, I don't know, pacemakers, you name it. Have something that differentiates either your product or your company. A good differentiator: we're a domestic brand, okay? The assembly of all the things, you're going to say that I'm making a domestic company. We're going to supply protective equipment, personal protective equipment, domestically produced for the US market, okay? But if you don't construct all of the elements necessary for people to believe that, it's like a stool without, with a weak leg, it's going to collapse. So the idea of this exercise is to make sure that you're assembling all of the values and all of the priorities and all of the steps that you're doing to build the business underneath that differentiator. And that's what I was trying to show on the right, is this idea that the more you substantiate that, the proof points of that differentiator, the stronger that differentiator becomes. And these are important exercises in the scope of business development, because we do have to think multidimensional around certain priorities. And I'm going to close the presentation by basically saying that in the heart of the business development process, we want to solve the now. We are, and we should be, the most creative thinkers in the industry or in the business. We run to the boom. We understand the situation. We navigate through. At the same time, we're constantly exploring the next. What's going to be the new now? You know, the new normal. These are really important things. And if we're making steps towards that today, you're not going to be, or you're maybe going to be in a better position to handle that future. When I was in Greece in 2010, there were a lot of companies that solved the now, but about 6 months later were out of business because they didn't think about where the future was going to be. And then the hardest exercise is, of course, imagining beyond. You have to think, what's going to disrupt you? And this is really far out thinking, but it's important to do the exercise as to, you know, where will this business be? I mean, there are certain brands that were in the tobacco industry that are now in the sports industry. They've evolved. At some point they realized that they can't be in this industry anymore, and they're going to make those shifts because they didn't see a future for that industry. So thank you very much for letting me present a little bit about my view on business development. And I highly encourage you to do some of these exercises around building out your differentiators and looking at the positioning in the context of COVID. And if anyone wants to share those with me, I'd be happy to look at them and challenge your thinking. Thank you.
I will unshare your screen so we can have just faces and ask you how much of that presentation was as true back in November as it was today. I appreciated the context, but felt as though that was all true without a pandemic. Is there anything different now?
For me, in my world, there's nothing different. I've expected pandemics, I've expected crises. There's fundamentally nothing different in my world because we're constantly looking for these types of things, these types of changes. It's more validating of anything than you know, this epiphany. And so when we're looking at the crisis, of course, you know, we have to address the suffering. We have to address the immediacy of can we get protective equipment? Can we get tests? Can we vectorize the data so that we can protect society and make improvements and make good decisions? These are all things that everyone knows. They're scared. They don't know what to prioritize, maybe because there's so much noise, there's so much dust, there's so much boom that they don't know what to do. But the reality is, from a business development standpoint, we're constantly thinking about these types of things. So there's it's only creating the urgency and the priorities rather than this great epiphany like, oh man, the world has changed. The world hasn't changed.
In an hour and a half, I'm going to be doing a LinkedIn Live with Brian Sullivan. He is a sales guy, he focuses in life sciences, and he does a weekly video, which I encourage folks to do if they're so inclined. And it's always about how to pick up the phone, basically. The phone is a proxy for communicate with your prospects and customers. And it's formulaic, and it hasn't changed. I wish I knew his 5 questions to ask offhand, but I'll share a link in Slack with folks when I find it. And if you're available in an hour and a half's time, just be on LinkedIn, and the notification light will say that I'm live, and you can tune in. I remember just about maybe 2 months ago when this first happened, and everyone was just stunned that all business came to a just stop. I think in medical devices especially, Jonathan, it's acute because most bigger companies are filled with sales forces that used to get in their cars and drive to hospitals and put on their protective gear and stand in the OR, and they're not allowed. Not to mention that the people who would otherwise find some time for that 5 to 10 minute conversation don't have the time. So what would you advise them? I mean, their primary way of communicating with people has been disrupted, just doesn't seem strong enough a verb.
Certainly. I mean, it is very disruptive. And if I'm a salesperson going into trying to do my job, trying to address things, it's hard because we're creatures of habit. We fall into these kind of comfort zones where it's a continuity thing, and that's why business development is so critical, because in the mind of the business developer, as soon as you get comfortable, you get uncomfortable, if that makes any sense. So the fact that you're able to go in and have this dialogue, and you're thinking, oh wow, there's doctors that are now using some augmented reality or virtual reality type technologies. Can I get into the OR inside of those types of environments where I'm being able to monitor and assist, provide information, support, understand the dynamic in the OR? These are things that should be, obviously explored. Now, we have to solve the now. These guys, they're unable to make their sales, or maybe they're able to make their sales. It really depends on the industry, and it's very important to be exercising the business development thinking all the time. And if you're a sales guy, seek out the business development person in the company, because they're going to give you different perspectives. They're going to give you different insights as to how to look in the world. That's going to be very valuable, and maybe not necessarily for this particular situation, because you're dealing with the urgency of maybe paying your own bills or the company, but for future actions, you'll be in a better position to address these things. I take it from a personal perspective. I look at my businesses. I've never been more busy than at this time. I literally have got 10 companies that are desperate for capital and more resources because they're just doing more.
Tell us about that, though.
I'll give you a great example.
What does Jonathan actually do? Are you the guy that people call when I need to raise money? Can you help me raise money? Is that your job? Is that how you define your role?
It's not my job. I'm an investor, and I like getting involved in personal projects. I like doing things that I enjoy doing. And
you're rich, aren't you? You're rich.
No,
You're
I've
rich.
made money. I've lost a lot of money. I promise you, it's been a painful experience through many cycles.
That's what a rich guy says.
Well, I can tell you that right now things are moving in a positive way. But I can tell you that over the years, it has been moments of very severe stress. And so that's why I spend my time looking at the optics of business development, or looking through the window of business development, because
Have you had the talk with Mrs. Saul? What are we going to do?
yeah. In
I had
fact,
the talk with Mrs. Hage.
flew back to the United States from Greece because there was nothing left. I was trying to hold on emotionally to everything there, and there was nothing that I could do there. Yes, I have two.
What are their ages?
19 and 16.
So college. Which college?
UC Santa Cruz.
That's not free, is it?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, it's an interesting situation with some of the companies. One of the companies I'm partnering with, they're doing scanning of cities for setting up the scaffolding in regards to the Internet of Things, in regards to digital twin cities. They never thought ever in their life they would have empty cities that they could scan. It saved them literally tens of millions of dollars processing time to now go in and drive through cities and scan them when they were never able to do it efficiently.
Can you tell us, how did you raise 2.5 million this week? Any details? What company it is? Who'd you call? How did this happen? That just seems extraordinary to me.
It's still a little bit confidential, so
Whatever you can share. What category?
Category is in the COVID testing category.
Okay.
And so it's essentially, creating some solutions for the market, because we really do think that testing is going to be important, and the data from those tests are going to be even more important in helping solve the problem.
Who's in your Rolodex? Who did you call? Angels? Venture? Banks? What?
Doctors.
So you picked up, let's arguably say, 5 doctors, each of whom had $500,000 to put in?
They're the ones that understand the situation. They understood the value that was going to be created, and they were ready to do the deal right away.
I know you talked to Brent not long ago about your deep urology network. Were these urologists, or what doctors can I think of, when other folks come to me in different categories?
Doctors, people, who see the situation and understand that if
specialists, if doctor, then call Jonathan, all the doctors?
No, I mean, we talk to certain doctors who have been fortunate, or who are business minded, who are on a,
Right.
who had the excess
position.
income, or the savings.
Who becomes part of your doctor network? Doctors who what? Who do you reach out to? How do they become aware of Jonathan Saul?
That I don't know. I'm not sure, because
you gave us a talk about positioning. That was really disappointing.
No, because it was really via surrogates. So, there were other people involved in the process, and of course those networks, it was more about articulating the necessity and the opportunity. The necessity they understood, the opportunity they understood. It became a very easy sale.
I'm going to open all of the microphones.
Hey,
so
Joe, how are you?
Noise. I'm going to open up so you can all talk if you have something.
Hey,
attending.
Jonathan?
Another thing that I wanted to share was that we have another project with Partnership Health, and I mean, I'm used to working from home. My wife is very understanding. We know how to navigate. We have good coping skills in terms of the environment of working together and being in the same space for 12 hours or more a day. A lot of people don't have those skills. And now there are businesses that are flourishing because people not knowing how to be a good partner in a relationship. I have lifestyle coaches and psychologists that are telling me they've never been busier than ever. I mean, it's just been insane. They're booked from morning to night helping people. So there are a lot of opportunities to see the world differently. And I think that's the main, kind of thrust of this all, is that we really need to see, everyone's looking at the oh my God, we're going to be home. And we're looking at, oh my God, everyone's going to be home. What does that mean? It's just a slightly different perspective. We're sometimes slightly removed from we're observing rather than participating. But that thinking from a business development standpoint is very, very important. It's not just outside the box thinking. It's sometimes remove the box thinking. You really have to exercise that. And of course, we have to pay the bills. We have to do day-to-day stuff. We have to address the now. But business development is really exercising our thinking creatively for all types of situations, whether it's a pandemic or a new evolution in the way that people behave.
I believe that almost no capital equipment will be sold in the next 18 months to a hospital unless it is absolutely imperative. Agree, disagree? You can position yourself however the hell you want. They have no money. They've lost all elective surgeries for months. Their bottom lines are in the red. They cannot justify a capital expense. So what do you do if you're a capital expense medical device sales guy? Find a new job?
So that could be a situation. That could be moving to a subscription model, which is definitely, trending very, very aggressively. There's maybe a repurposing of where those surgeries or where those elective procedures take place. Are the hospitals going to collapse because they're 40% empty, or they're really just dealing with the extreme cases and they can't get back to normal? Am I shifting behavior to changing the way that hospitals are operating? Maybe I'm moving into a different category to support getting the hospitals into a different way of working. Again, it is a creative exercise. I don't have the answers. It's just pushing out the envelope, and if you can map it out, if you can see it in a broader perspective, it sometimes helps. Zooming in, zooming out really helps the experience. So I would ask you, if you have a lot of clients or a lot of experience working with large capital, what category, what price point, what size equipment, what are those procedures like, and do they need to be done in a hospital versus some other type of environment? What's consumer behavior going to be like? Are they going to want to go into a hospital when they're so concerned about perhaps their safety? I personally would not spend time in a hospital if I didn't have to.
Sanjeev, you had a question. I opened your microphone.
Jonathan, I have a question. I'm trying to raise capital right now for my company. And generally, you have to meet people for them to, not just looking at your business plan, the trust builds up during your meetings. So how do you go
Whoops, that was my fault. I changed him into a panelist so that I could show his picture. Sanjeev, try again.
Yeah, so what I was saying is that, I'm trying to raise capital right now for my company. And unfortunately, with the pandemic, you can't go in and meet these people, right? And so without meeting people, how do you create the trust for someone to come in and give you $500,000 or $1 million, right? How do you go about, how did you do it?
I mentioned, I don't know if it was clear, I did it through surrogates. So we leveraged through other people who knew those people very closely. And that's a very important part of the networking aspect of capital raising, is that you can pitch all you like all day long. They can look at the numbers, but we know that a lot of people invest in people.
Right.
And so I would focus on, and I did personally focus on people, and assume that any one of those people who understood those categories or understood that business or understood the situation would have in their particular Rolodex somebody who would understand that and trust them.
So to Jonathan's point, I'm a part of the angel group here in Tucson, angel investors, and I have seen over and over again people who had successful exits in the past and had made these angel investors money before get up and pitch and have nothing but themselves, an idea, and some relationships, and get money just thrown at them because people believed in them and believed they could do it. And it was 100% relationship, and that was all there was. That was all there was at that point.
Or they have
Nobody's going to give you money in 3 days or 4 days because they like your spreadsheet.
So Jonathan, I've got a more finer question. If you're using surrogates, I mean, how many slices of the pie are there? The person who raises money is going to get something, and if you got a surrogate, they're going to want something. Is the cost of acquiring the capital suddenly getting very high? Is it expensive?
So it's a good question. We didn't do it in a means of, from a business standpoint, raising the funds and taking a financial reward for that. We really did it for building the business, and we disclosed that up front, that we're trying to solve a problem for society, and that the reward comes at the end when we fix things, that we make things better. So that was this particular situation. I would think in other times where money needs to be raised, yes, you end up giving up points here, percentages there, but my view has always been to bring the money in, make the business. If you make a big business or if you have a great idea and you believe in it, it's okay to give up a little bit in the beginning.
Thanks. Hey, Joe, I got a question for you.
You bet. Go ahead.
So you put out there that you don't think there's going to be no capital equipment sold to hospitals in the next 18 months. Does that apply to ambulatory surgery centers?
I don't know.
Good answer. I respect that. Anyway, listen, I've got to hop off for another conference. Great to see you guys. Catch you on the next.
Okay, Mark. Thank you.
What
Jonathan,
does everyone find?
Hi, Jonathan. This is Josue Garza. Good presentation. Thank you for that. I have a question. How do you communicate, or what tips can you give us of communicating your strategy to the internal team? You talked a lot about the external, but I think that how you communicate your strategy internally is going to it's very important because your team is going to support your strategy. So what are some good tips in order to communicate your shifts in strategy and to avoid your team being like, oh, here we go again, you know, we're shifting gears again?
Right. Well, I do think that you can't do these exercises with everyone. There are some people who they find it too disruptive to go through that creative process, or they're having a hard time understanding the future very, very. So I think you need to first look at the personality style of the person on your team that you're engaging. Go through some of these business development exercises with the people who have the greatest creativity, the strongest cognitive, capacities, and who are the most confident in their job, because you might end up going through some of these questions and some of these exercises, and the person all of a sudden thinks, oh geez, I'm going to be out of a job in a year. And I've seen that literally take place in meetings where the development teams or the creative teams would brainstorm out a situation and realize, oh my God, we've got to close this division in 18 months. So you need somebody who's confident that they know that you're going to keep them on after that situation. As far as further communicating where that future is going, then it's about placing those priorities. It's kind of like the differentiator steps. You're constructing a series of elements that will substantiate that future, and it will become more and more apparent as you go through that process. That's always been my way of doing things. That not to force. You can show them the leadership aspect. You can tell them we're going to close down this division, but you're going to scare a lot of people. And I think distribution, people are a little bit more used to ebbs and flows. Okay, this product is trending down, this product is trending up. They're more used to the not being attached. I was very unfortunate and fortunate to survive a fire in my parents' home when I was a kid. I lost all my comic books, my baseball cards, all my toys, all my clothes, everything. Every paper airplane I ever made was all gone. But what I learned is that this kind of, well, let's not be so attached to objects or things. It's kind of ironic that I ended up in the luxury industry, promoting to people, that this object is worth more than you can ever imagine. But I think that you have to look at the personality of the person and understand, are they emotionally and do they get very attached to things versus, can they decouple their business thinking from the day-to-day operations of the business? Does that help?
Gotcha. Yeah, thank you.
So, Jonathan, what do you think is the value or importance of having, especially in the medical device space, of having a cross-functional team that includes people like regulatory, just in the brainstorming process for business development? I'm used to getting thrown a marketing strategy that makes regulatory-wise makes no sense and is extremely expensive. I've had marketing where I'm like, okay, where do we need to start with the global registration or the registration process? And I'm like, where do you want to sell it? They're like, globally. I'm like, do you even know that you're working in medical devices? So what are your thoughts there? Because and I'm also used to being called the stopper, the blocker, the police, so how does a good marketing person balance all those things?
And those are names that her husband is calling her. Just imagine.
I personally like regulatory. I think actually regulatory thinks like business development people, because they're trying to anticipate what could be a problem. They're before left of boom, they're prepping everything. They're minimizing risks. They are thinking out right of boom. If that happens, what do we do? How do we handle it? So I would say that you guys, you're in a great position to actually take the lead on a lot of these things. And people,
I'm sending you a virtual hug right now. That just made my heart happy.
Good. Well, I mean it sincerely. I know that when I first got involved in the medical device industry in 2002, I really connected well with the regulatory teams, because I really felt that they were actually more progressive and less restrictive than people realized. They were just looking out for the future. They were considering the now. And some really good regulatory people were thinking, how do I tear down some of these regulatory constraints so that we can actually have a new business in the future? We did this in the neurophysiology environment, where we figured out pathways to get through the FDA, only to then open up, multi-billion dollar industries by tearing down some of those issues.
And you know what? That's actually why I started my business, is because in industry, like I was always thinking that left of boom, and they're like, there's just not going to be a boom. And I got tired of being having that foresight and trying to help their business grow. And then they just stood there and got exploded on. Or when I was telling them something for 10 months that, oh, hey, guys, you're going to have to move away from phthalates in 2008 or whatever year it was. And no, we're not going to do it. And then when a month before the regulation went into effect, a customer called and said, hey, what's your phthalate transition plan? And then the owner of the company is like, hey, Michelle, I need you to transition 3,000 products away from DEHP in 30 days. And so I was just like, I'm going to go do my own thing where I can really help people who want to be helped.
Find the business development people within the organizations, and I think you guys will actually speak the same language.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see, I'm now sharing my screen and lamenting that it will be, I don't know, like 7 weeks before I understand what the hell anyone's talking about again. Biocompatibility, whatever. Design, FDA mindset, I don't. So this was refreshing. I was able to track with you the whole time. That was great. Andrea Davis, you have to introduce yourself. And York, for God's sakes, I know you were on the call. I know you couldn't have your video shown. I know we couldn't hear you. You were not an organizer or a panelist, but congratulations. That's a fantastic haircut. I don't know how you got it. You look fantastic.
It's Jill.
Well, apparently I did write
Let everyone know that you had just stayed. Yes.
Yeah, that I just took a shower. So it's my way of
myself. What else can we know about you besides your cleanliness routine?
So I work with patent information. I'm not an attorney. What I do instead is I use patent information to help surgeons, medical device companies, entrepreneurs, startups figure out whether their ideas are novel, if somebody else already has a patent on it, do they have freedom to operate, what is the competitive landscape within IP, what their competitors are filing patents on, what are the trends, And so it's super exciting. I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I worked at a search firm that basically had just a bunch of people like me with any kind of clients. And then I really love medical devices, and ended up working for NuVasive, which is a spinal medical device in San Diego for 9 years. Had a fantastic experience, and then I started my own firm 3 years ago.
How busy are you right now?
Pretty busy, still
Yeah?
pretty busy. Yeah, it's been amazing, and you never know. But I think a lot of times in recession, some companies are really going forward with patents and IP because it's something they can invest on, and the benefits are so long term, and they cannot afford not to file IP. It's not really an option for a lot of them.
Two things. One, I just muted Michelle for some canine reason. And two, I just sent a note out to everyone, the link to the COVID calls we've been having. And our own Andrea Davis was the star the week before last. So if you want to see her say lots of impressive things, go ahead.
I appreciate the opportunity, and listening to Jonathan talk about this stuff. This is all kind of new to me. I mean, I've spoken at conferences, and I've been involved in sort of smaller groups, and I've always been a little afraid of being online on a video, especially. But I think it's a perfect opportunity, and this is the thing we have to do these days. So I'm shifting and just going with it, and doing webinars and doing online. I'm moderating something in a couple weeks again, and within patents. So it's kind of like you go with the flow and take the opportunities you're given, and you made yourself. So it was very, very interesting listening to your talk.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Andrea. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Mauro Aceves. I'm fairly new to the group. I have met Joe, when did I met you? I met you probably, 10 years, 15 years ago, a while.
12 years ago.
Yes, so, but thank you, Jonathan. It was very interesting, your conversation, especially for me. I've been in medical devices, marketing of medical devices for 20 years, and I have an engineering background, so I was relating very well what you said. Okay, these engineers think away or not. But thank you, because I'm finding my way of trying to get into basically how to help small companies make that big idea success, right? So thank you very much, and I appreciate it. So, and I have a question. I don't know if I have time, Joe, because I was trying to ask Jonathan. So how do you adjust your thought process, especially this business development, when you have this startup company that they don't have any idea versus that established product that you might just coming in and it's already done?
Let me make sure I understand the question, Mauro. So
I think it's a brand new category.
Right, yeah, brand new category versus something established.
Okay, so it's something that I've seen, quite often in startups. They have this kind of singular, very sharp focus on a particular need or solving a very specific problem, and that's an advantage because they're obsessively focused on executing that opportunity, and whereas in the larger companies, they tend to lull themselves into out of business, and if they're not self-cannibalizing, if they're not doing other techniques to challenge their thinking, it can become quite dangerous. I mean, where it might not be a pandemic that puts them out of business, but it could be very well a new competitor that quickly disrupts them. And things are accelerating. Things are happening so fast that we're seeing disruption at an unbelievable pace. I mean, companies that are coming out literally are getting disrupted maybe a year later because we can rapid prototype, we can do other things. It's very easy to, I mean, there is a lot of capital available. So, to do and set up a business overnight is actually quite doable. So I really do think that pushing through exercises, especially with creative thinkers like engineers are also creative thinkers. They do tend to understand the creative process, and I think pushing them to think, to solve other problems. If you can identify new problems, that usually triggers some thinking with the engineers, and I found that's a quite fun exercise to do, and you end up getting allies within the corporation. If you're an internal person or if you're an external consultant, helping them, they don't see you as a threat, but they see you as bringing them new challenges to solve. And a lot of times they've thought about these things, they just haven't addressed it because they didn't think there was a market for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of times is when engineers get together with surgeons and surgeons tell them what the problem is and what they can't solve. That's when the engineers are most fired up, and they'll just go for it. A lot of times, yeah, they don't have visibility to the problem itself.
Yeah, it's showing the boom, showing the problem, but again, not the smoke, not the destruction, but what's going to be the new future? What's going to be the next norm?
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Of course.
I think we have come to a close. These are running about 75 minutes, so this feels about right. Anyone else have anything to add? All the mics are open if you want to say anything.
Well, just thanks, Jonathan. I work in product development and medical devices as well as doing business development, so I kind of have both sides of the coin. And I've relied so much on networking and relationships over my tenure that this whole COVID thing is really kind of throwing me for a loop. So I need to be more active online, but your points about brand and so forth are really important right now in terms of relying more on the web and more on virtual marketing as opposed to what we've traditionally relied on, which is referrals and relationships.
I find that what you just said counterintuitive, Jorg. You start by saying you've relied your career on your network, but COVID has changed that dynamic for you.
Yeah, it's not
network more now than ever.
Right.
Well, yeah, but I need to rely. I have so much contact with all those people all the time that I'm now relying a little bit less on, because I don't have that same level of contact with those people, which may be my fault.
Talking about physical interaction.
Yeah. Well, I used to go to events, 3 times a week, and I know Andrea, I know Michelle, I know people from all these different events that I've been going to over the years. And now I'm kind of taking the time to focus a little bit more on the website and other things because I'm not doing that activity anymore. So that's I think that's what I alluded to.
I think that what we're doing here it's just so right now. I mean, I'm choosing to personalize this just for illustrative purposes, but does anyone on this call feel as though I'm not in the room with them right now and that we're just hanging out? Do you feel any different than if I were right there? This is what I know it's going to take a lot of people a lot of time to get this comfortable. Oh my God, I'm on video. Oh my God, it's being recorded. Guys, nobody gives a shit that you just took a shower or you didn't take a shower. Nobody cares.
Not like that. This is even more connective because you see people in their homes and you see their animals and you see their pictures on the wall, and yes, you see their wet hair, but it is a much more personable than being all presentable, like a headshot that you have on LinkedIn, right? And
I'm sorry, I'm from Mississippi. We don't go to Walmart without doing our hair or makeup. So this is a huge
Hey,
cultural shift for me.
Yeah.
I'm glad I don't have that problem. So,
This is Rob Packard. I have a couple of comments on that. Number one, Joe's seen me huddled in a garage with a space heater wrapped in
I love
comforter
that. I missed that
at
room.
2 in the morning.
I missed that room.
So nobody can go lower. I was at my bottom. So that's the worst you can be. So whatever happens, you're looking better. Number two, the one thing that you miss when you're not face to face with Joe is you don't get a hug. So
I don't know if I'm allowed to hug people now. This is a problem. Honestly, I've
it
had
is a
people
problem.
say, when's the next 10X? When's the next 10X? I say, I honestly don't know if there's going to be another 10X, because if I can't hug my guests, there's no point.
Yeah.
There's no point.
People are trying to do things virtually, but it's a lot of the appeal of 10X was personal. And
That's the whole point of
you
10X.
lose a little bit of that.
A medical device
with a remote.
conference. There's
So
plenty of content online.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we've canceled all of our trade show activity. I mean, there's no trade shows to go to, and you know, so it's kind of rethinking everything about how we market and so forth, because we're not going to be doing those things probably for a while, if ever again. I don't know.
Well,
I don't. Somebody posted on, I think it was a Facebook post, and it was talking about kind of how to see the world, and it was one of those feel good, and it was saying how people are like, oh my God, COVID has taken this and this and this and this and this and this away from me. But what has it brought? And my children have had no choice but to be with me these last 2 months. They would have gotten away from me, but God kept them in the house, and I got to smother them. There was a reason for that. Now, do they want to get away from me still? Yes.
Hello, because they were driving you crazy?
No.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have to go. We're buying a house in San Diego
Oh.
right now, so I have to go to check the
Take
video.
the camera with us. Stay on and let us see the new house. We'll all tell you.
no, yeah.
It was lovely meeting all of you.
Good.
Thank you so much.
great to meet you.
All right.
Bye, Andrea.
We should talk. I'm in the process of filing some patents, so I'd like to talk to you about it. This is Sanjay.
Absolutely. Yeah, please connect with me. I'd love to.
Will do.
Bye.
Who was that who just wanted to file patents?
I think it was Sanjay.
Sanjay.
Oh, Sanjeev, okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, you know,
there
girls
are-
will love this, and I hate to hang up, but now as your disciplinarian people, go do some work.
Okay.
There is a
Thanks,
question that I
Thanks,
You know
Jonathan.
where to find me.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Great meeting you guys.
Thank you for
Everyone.
this. Bye.
Bye.
bye-bye.
Ciao.